Please excuse the voice. Just had a night out with the girls. Taking part to a karaoke. Going to a karaoke bar. Didn't get the nerve to sing yet, but nevertheless, there was singing. And being spring. And kind of getting the new energy of what spring brings. I wanted to talk about the latest book I read, which is The 5 Love Languages by Chapman. I have read the book a while back, but it's funny how with time, you being a different person, you get different messages or different insights to the same book. And what I wanted to talk about is we all have a primary love language that might be as different as Chinese is to English with other people, how they express love and affection. And this isn't necessarily just for intimate relationships, it's just relationships with people in general. Because the need to be loved and the need for affection, I think, is is a primary need in our life as humans. And no matter how many things we own or how many successes we have, if we don't have that solid, affectionate relationships, understanding relationships with our friends, family, loved ones, it's just, you don't feel as, maybe as fulfilled. This, of course, kind of forming your love language starts in childhood. And indeed, your parents are models. Some children can grow up in a safe, loving environment and just form a more secure way of expressing love through their love language. And some kids, unfortunately, can grow up in households where uncertainty and insecurity can happen, and they do form their love language, but it's just a bit distorted. That doesn't necessarily mean that with time as an adult you cannot learn to express love and affection in a more healthy way for you and the others. It just takes a little bit more time and practice and focus. Kind of in another aspect that the book, I feel it didn't touch upon, because I don't think at the time the subject was something people thought about. The book was written way back. I should search when, but yeah. I think self-love. I think it's very important. It's the basis of all the other relationships in your life. I think by having a solid, loving, and understanding relationship with yourself, you can form better relationships with people, more stable, more grounded, And I do think this is the first relationship you'll ever have. Even if we don't necessarily conceive it this way, it's with yourself. And for me personally, applying the love languages, because you might have one primary and others secondary, you might have a mix. Applying them to yourself, to the relationship to yourself, I think is, well, I feel it is priceless. And that's if I just make one suggestion in life, that would be speaking your love language to yourself first. And love is a confusing subject. Affection is a confusing subject, because we sometimes mistake kind of infatuation for love. In the book, there is a lot of examples of marriages, but again, it's concepts that can be taken to other relationships, to all sorts of relationships, even business relationships. It's just it has a lot of practical use. So even if you read the book and it's just examples of marriages and how they are speaking their love language to one another, take that information and you can apply it again to yourself first, to your friends, to your family, and yes, to your intimate partners. You know, there's another book that Love Lasts 3 Years, and I think that is mistaking love for infatuation. When you first meet somebody, you automatically get that rush of hormones, and they can do you no wrong, and it could last for a couple of years, but at some point that diminishes, and that's when choosing to speak the other partner's love language is very important. And there is a reference in the book of a concept that Ross Campbell came up with, that we all have an affective kind of reservoir in ourselves, and by speaking each other's love languages, that reservoir gets full. And when we feel loved and our reservoir is full, we behave differently. And when it's empty, of course, there's going to be arguing. There's going to be a lot of behaviors that aren't necessarily healthy, but they're all signs that other person actually needs to be loved, and needs to be understood. And again, as I mentioned before, a lot of focus in my mind would be to be able to fill your affective reservoir with the relationship that you have with yourself, and then it's gonna spill over into the other relationships, and yes, allowing other people to love you, to be affectionate to yourself does fill your reservoir. but not necessarily have them be the only source of affection and love in your life. You be the first source in your life. Again, I happen to feel that is priceless. And after infatuation kind of wears off and you actually see the other person for who they are, for the quirks and the weird habits and the things that might not gel with your personality, it's time to take things a little deeper and actually focus and observe how they give affection, how they receive affection and love, and trying to understand that, again, it might be Chinese to your English. The way they're expressing these things, it doesn't necessarily mean this cannot be learned, their love language, and your love language explained and understood by the other one. It's a choice and a willingness to continue. And the first love language is declarations or words of affirmation, and basically compliments or supportive words, encouraging words. I, for one, know that this is important to me, and I know how different you feel when that is not available necessarily, and how you behave, how differently you behave when that is not available. Some people, this is their primary love language, and even though it might feel awkward if this is not your primary love language, in order to do that is a choice. You have to consider if you want to continue that particular relationship with that person. There's a lot of examples, again, in the book. It's more thorough. Examples of people in marriages that have learned each other's love language and spend the time to understand one another in that aspect. Another love language is services. People appreciate, for example, you taking out the garbage or filling up the tank on the car, or just being there for them in certain situations. You being, your time being of service. So it might be that somebody would feel so loved if you did the dishes. I know. Or if you just took the kids from school, or just, I don't know, watch the kids, whatever. There are a lot of services you can do for one another, if that is one of your primary love languages, or the other person's. Another love language is time spent together, and some people, including myself, feel more appreciated when you actually take the time to spend quality time with them. I know in these busy days, or there's a lot of things to do. It might feel like another thing to tick off the list, but it's something more fulfilling and more grounding for the other person, if that's their love language. They will appreciate it more if you actually took the time and spend it, not necessarily just not doing anything, but having quality time together. Maybe it could be deep conversations, maybe it could be doing activities together. There's an array of things you can do for somebody if that is indeed their love language, primary love language. Another love language is gifts. Some people just feel loved if the other person just brings them gifts out of nowhere or for special occasions. And of course, it doesn't necessarily need to be something grand every time. It could be just a flower. I don't know, a little note, a little thing that just reminds you of them or makes them feel like you took the time and the effort to make them feel appreciated and loved. Another love language would be touch. There are a lot of people that just feel loved if there's hugging, there's hand holding. Of course, it could lead to intimate relationships as well, sex. If that is not available to them, they don't perceive themselves as being loved by you. So it is something important to them, and it's something I know not necessarily a lot of people have that tendency and don't necessarily like to be touched, but it's again something you're doing for the other person, something that could be learned in time. Okay, let me check the fifth one. Okay, so it's declaration, time spent in two, gifts, services, and physical contact. Well, 5 for 5. Yeah, I do believe this is very important in order to bond with others, to actually be able to understand the other person from this perspective. I don't think this is the only puzzle piece in the puzzle of a human, but I think it's a very important one. And it's gonna be a little tricky to find your love language if your affective reservoir has been full for a long time, or actually has been empty for a long time. But it's something to observe, to be patient with. And I just feel it makes a whole lot of difference in your life. So I really hope this was helpful. And let me know if or what actually resonated with you, and maybe what is your love language, from the short descriptions I gave you, if you kind of have a inkling of what it might be. And I hope to see you soon, and have a great day and a great spring. Bye.